Good evening, everyone. This is the part 8 on a pictorial biography of Sakyamuni Buddha, and the rest story continues like this. Siddhartha was deeply moved by the girl's song. He had tightened his string of life too much. Should he die before attaining enlightenment? All the hardships he had gone through would be meaningless. Tormenting one's physical body was certainly not the right way to seek the ultimate truth. Thus, he decided to stop practicing asceticism and only to continue his mental diligence in his search for ultimate enlightenment. From that time on, Siddhartha regularly went for alms and ate every morning. Now Siddhartha's health was completely restored, and his complexion became as glowing as gold, the same complexion he had when he lived in the royal palace before. Although Siddhartha was quite clear now that attaining enlightenment by practicing strict asceticism was just as impossible as twining sand to make a rope. The five Shamanas who had followed him felt quite otherwise. They still firmly believed that practicing strict asceticism was the only way to enlightenment. When Siddhartha gave up asceticism and returned to normal eating habits, they thought he had become a glutton. So they left him alone and went to Magdava, now Sarnath, near Varanasi, now Banaras. One morning, a girl named Sujata, who lived in the village, cooked a pot of delicious rice porridge milk and brought it over as an offering to Siddhartha. After presenting the offering, the noble girl said, I wish you success in your aspiration as I have succeeded in my aspiration. Siddhartha ate the porridge she offered him and felt it was very beneficial in improving both his physical and mental stamina. Sujata had made a wish that a child be born to her, and then she offered food to Siddhartha to show her gratitude. That same day, Siddhartha went for a bath in the Narayanjana river. Then he sat down under a sala tree by the river bank and concentrated himself in meditation, hoping to attain enlightenment in the silence of the night, when no one might be passing by. At dusk, Siddhartha left the sala tree and walked to a large Bodhi tree, which he had chosen previously as a place for his meditation. On the way, he met a straw peddler named Suthiya and accepted from him an offering of a bunch of straw. So he made a seat with the straw and sat down under the large Bodhi tree facing east. Having sat down under the Bodhi tree, Siddhartha made a vow to himself: even if my blood dries up and my muscles shrink, leaving skin and bones only, I will not leave this seat until I finally and absolutely achieve the goal of finding for myself and all the mankind a way of deliverance from the suffering of the turning round life and death. In short, Siddhartha sat under a Bodhi tree and vowed that he would not quit the spot until he had attained enlightenment. From that time on, Siddhartha concentrated his will and aroused his mind to ward off the disturbances coming from nature and to cast away the memory of the illusory joys of the past. He completely detached himself from all worldly thoughts and devoted his whole mind to the search for the ultimate truth. In his searching and reflection, he asked, how does all suffering arise? How can one detach himself from suffering? Since Siddhartha was a still young man, only 35 years old, images of the pleasures provided for him by his father when he lived in the palace still appeared at times in his mind. These phantoms distracted Siddhartha's mind, enticing him to linger on the pleasures of the past and even arousing his desire to return to the royal palace and to enjoy the sensual life of former days. But because of his resolute vow, Siddhartha resisted these temptations with forceful mental efforts. Finally, he succeeded in completely dispersing all the illusory thoughts that were disturbing him. His mind became calm and tranquil like pond water on a breezeless day. He was in deep samadhi. In the tranquility of samadhi, Siddhartha searched and observed mentally, trying to find the source of his own life. Thus, he acquired the power of being aware of all his previous lives. Venu Vasanasmriti. Through further insight, he also acquires the divine vision, Divya Chakshus, the power to see all things and to know the future rebirths of all beings. He thus came to realize that the unceasing cycle of death and rebirth of all beings is solely a manifestation of one's karma, that is, one's thoughts and deeds. Some people could be born to a better life than they presently enjoyed, encountering all sorts of happiness because they had done good deeds. Some, on the other hand, could be born to a condition worse than their present ones and suffer very much because they had done bad deeds. Finally, he observed that the ultimate cause of the turning around of birth and death in the vast sea of worldly suffering that mankind and all other sentient beings are involved in is ignorance, moha, and the attachment to transient and illusory pleasures. And for those who are unwilling to remain in the cycle of death and rebirth, there is only one way to escape, that is, by the complete destruction or elimination of all lustful desires. Siddhartha thus acquired Ashravaksha, the extension of outflows. He knew that he had delivered himself from all passions and delusions, that he had discovered the cause of and the method of elimination of all suffering, and that he had attained enlightenment. This was a great event that occurred before dawn, on the full moon day of the Vishakha month. Siddhartha Gautama of the Shakya clan, at the age of 35, attained supreme enlightenment and became the Buddha under the Bodhi tree by the bank of the Nairanjana river. Since then, the world has possessed a shining lamp. Having attained supreme enlightenment and freed himself from all worldly suffering, the Buddha remained contentedly in the happiness of nirvana, that is, the happiness arising from both subduing all passions and liberation from all suffering. Later, a Brahmana approached him under a banyan tree, saluted him courteously, and asked, Gautama, to be a true Brahmana and a noble person, what kind of a moral character must one have? The Buddha paid no heed to the rudeness of being called by the name instead by his title Bhagavan or Buddha, but answered him directly. A true Brahmana must abandon all evil, give up haughtiness, be prudent and clean, pursue extensive learning and practice pure living. He must differ from ordinary people in his conduct to deserve to be called a Brahmana. The Brahmana murmured to himself as he left, This Shramana Gautama really sees to my mind. This Shramana Gautama really sees to my mind. Many days later, while the Buddha was resting under a peepal tree, two merchants passed by. They found the Buddha sitting extraordinarily calmly and joyously, like somebody who had won the biggest battle, pleased by his victory. So they reverently offered the Buddha the exquisite food they had brought with them, and being deeply impressed by the Buddha's appearance and speech, they requested that the Buddha accept them as disciples. The names of the two merchants were Tapussa and Bhallika. Because both of them took refuge in the Buddha, they became the Buddha's first two disciples. After a long rest, the Buddha began to plan what he should do for the future. At first, he thought, Dharma I have comprehended is difficult and profound, and it can hardly be accepted by most people, whose desire nature is very strong. But with great compassion and unsurpassed wisdom, the Buddha then concluded, some people have light passion and few vexations. Some people have fairly little desire. Such people may be able to accept this Dharma, much as the lotus extends its stalk from the bottom of the pond up into the air to receive sunshine. I therefore should not hold secret the radiant truth, but shall make it known everywhere so that all people can benefit from it equally. Thus he decided to propagate the Dhamma. After making up his mind, thus the Buddha began to ponder, whom shall I convert first? This person must be inclined to the teaching of Dharma and must be quick in understanding it. First he thought of his own master, Arada Kalama, who was a wise man of reason and had very light passion. He was definitely the person to accept the Dharma. But soon he learned that Arada Kalama had passed away. He then thought of his other master, Ujjaka Ramaputra, but soon found out that he also had died. Finally, the five Shramanas who had followed him before in the practice of asceticism at Uruvela came round to the Buddha's consciousness. Mrigdava, near Varanasi, he left Uruvela at once in order to look for them. At Mrigdava, when the five Shramanas saw the Buddha approaching in the distance, they talked among themselves, Look there, Shramana Gautama is coming straight over. He has abandoned asceticism and become a voracious person. When he arrives, let's not talk to him, nor even greet him, nor take his robe and bow. Let's only prepare a cushion here. Let him sit down if he likes, otherwise I'll let him stand. Who would bother to greet a man of shaky will like him? But when the five Shamanas looked at Buddha, as he approached nearer to them, they found that he was not the sort of person they had thought him to be. They began to be aware that the Buddha was incomparably noble and serious and brilliant in the light of his halo. They had never seen such a one before. They were so astonished, indeed, that they unconsciously forgot that they had just been saying. Some of them quickly ran over and bowed, respectfully taking his robe and bowed. from the Buddha's hands, while others prepared the cushion on the seat and rushed to get water to saw him. After sitting down on the cushion they had prepared, the Buddha began to speak. Shramanas, I have attained the truth of nirvana, of the unborn and undying, and I want to expound and introduce it to you. If you learn it and practice it according to my direction, you will soon be enlightened, not in the future, but in the present life, or even in the present moment. I tell you nothing but the truth, that you must transcend birth and death by yourself. On hearing the Buddha's words, the five Shamanas could not help doubting him, for they had seen devotedly practicing before in pursuit of the ultimate truth. But then he had stopped. Now he came and said he had already attained unborn and undying nirvana. So the five Shamanas were reluctant to believe what the Buddha was saying, and they raised many questions with the Buddha. At last the Buddha said, Shamanas, please think. Did I ever tell you all these things before when we stayed together? Did I ever try to convince you that I had found supreme truth? The five Shamanas admitted, indeed, the Buddha had never said such things before, so they no longer refused to accept the Buddha's teaching. Thus, the Buddha's first sermon was given to the five Shamanas at Mugdava. This event was later recorded as the Dhammachakra Pravartana Sutta. During the first sermon, Kaundinya comprehended everything thoroughly, and all of his doubts about Dharma were clarified. Because of this, he requested that the Buddha shave his head, and thus Kaundinya became the first Buddhist bhikshu. From that time on, the Buddha resided with the five bhikshus at Mrgadaba. When two of the bhikshus went out for daily alms, he preached to the other three. When three of the bhikshus were out, he preached to the remaining two. By this method of preaching, everyone remained happy and learned the most. For the Buddha was the most skillful teacher in the world. The five bhikshus honestly practiced what the Buddha had taught them. Soon they all attained enlightenment and became the first group of arhants in the world. The Buddha taught the next Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, that is, the discourse of the characteristic of no self. Enough for today. Good night.